Hey everybody. There's something that I wanted to dive into a little bit on YouTube because I feel like I'm in a particularly unique place to be able to say a few things about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's something that I've been watching for a while now. I made the plunge recently, decided to buy. Unfortunately, I bought most of my stuff right before the drop, but we'll get to that later. This video is just gonna be kind of like a rundown for people who are interested in what this technology has to offer, and maybe people who are just the average Joe and they don't feel comfortable with something that they don't understand. And I know there's a lot of videos out there that try to tell you about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in a way that's really excited and a little over the top, and everybody kind of thinks they're a genius because there was a huge bull run recently. So I definitely don't have that perspective, since I put most of my money in right before the drop, and I was listening to a lot of these different guys, and I made a lot of basic errors and mistakes. So I can kind of tell you from my firsthand experience a better way to go about things than I did. And first of all, the rundown for Bitcoin for newbies. So as an introductory to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I wanted to kind of break it down for you in terms of what it really is. Imagine there was a resource, and this resource, you can kind of think of it like gold. It has intrinsic value. It has a lot of qualities that people really need and like, and it could advance societies, technologies, arts, right? We could all say that about gold and silver and different things that have these intrinsic values, and we can kind of say the same thing about Bitcoin. Basically, you can think of it as digital gold. So imagine this gold could be transferred across the world, across borders, between governments. It could be traded between phones. So this thing that has this value, because people need these qualities that this particular element has, can be instantly transported between two different electronic devices, and there is no transaction or very little transaction fees or time. We all know that with traditional banks, there's going to be high fees, especially internationally, if you're transferring from one currency to another. Sometimes some currencies have different taxes when they're going from one to the other. This kind of world that we live in right now, this paradigm of this financial paradigm that we live in, it's got a lot of unnecessary work being done. So if you have this element that can be transferred from one person to another, and it doesn't really take any extra work, the system is very contained, wouldn't that be great? Well, essentially that's what Bitcoin is. Okay? It's like a code that is so complex that it takes, at this point, over $1,000 per Bitcoin of electricity just to solve. There are a lot of computers that are working on solving these puzzles, and that's what we call miners. And it's only going to get more expensive to solve the code. We call that the difficulty. The difficulty rises. I hope that kind of explains to you a little bit about what this phenomenon is that's going on right now. Now, something that's been argued is that these cryptocurrencies don't have intrinsic value, but I'm here to say that I think that they do. I really do. I think that the fact that you can go from one country to another country with a certain amount of currency, with no middleman, no bank, nothing like that. Therefore, there are zero fees, there's no wait time. I think that's an extremely important aspect of the coin, and that's going to become more important for our globalized society. We all know that the world is becoming one in terms of an economy, even more so than ever before. And the roles of these middlemen is kind of dissipating, especially with the advent of these Bitcoins. Now, people are worried about money laundering, people are worried about illicit drugs, illicit drug trade. People have a lot of worries. People are worried that it's not backed by any gold. Well, I'm here to tell you that there are many arguments that counter these, and if you really look into the technology, you'll realize that these things were all taken into account during the creation of Bitcoin by Satoshi Nakamoto, who is an anonymous person who created this. And you can trace any Bitcoin transaction. It is public knowledge. It is public. We call it a blockchain. You can look at any transaction that is done, and you can't really even do that as an anonymous person with the dollar bill. People could be trading dollars and you won't be able to trace it. Maybe the feds could trace some of it. That doesn't mean that corruption isn't going on. And whenever you leave room for corruption, that's going to happen, in my opinion. Human nature is to take advantage of opportunities that you have that somebody else doesn't. And unfortunately, that's something that as I've gotten older, I truly believe in. Now, we can't just keep on creating Bitcoins because the difficulty is rising. People have invested in specifically Bitcoin. There are other cryptocurrencies, but they aren't going to be worth as much as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one particular puzzle that people have spent so much resources on solving and mining the Bitcoins that it won't disappear. If you're spending over $1,000 just to mine one Bitcoin, even the miners will then at least be selling the Bitcoins for $1,000 at least. And I think that price is just going to go up as the difficulty goes up, as more Bitcoins are mined, and maybe one day it could cost $10,000 to mine a Bitcoin. Then the value of the Bitcoin has to be over $10,000. So you can't hack this code. You can't access this without this specific key that you use to access your part of the blockchain when you own Bitcoin. So it is completely secured, and if somebody gets access to your key, yes, they can steal your money, but think about it. You're walking around with a wallet with money, you're walking around with credit cards. People could steal money from you, people could steal your identity and take over your bank account, just like that big Equifax hack that happened. And there are projects that are creating blockchains for public records. You could see how that could be very, very important for the future. Hackers would no longer be able to get into your personal records unless they have your specific key that you can keep private. They aren't going to give all your keys to companies like Equifax. And that's Civic, is that particular blockchain project, and I think that they're doing a really good job. Another thing is that Bitcoin is deflationary, and that there will only be a certain amount of Bitcoins mined, around 21 million. We have something like 16 million right now. So it's a very interesting concept that if you hold that money and more money's flowing into it, it will always be worth more later, which encourages people to save. And when you're encouraging people to save with an asset, that value is going to rise. People aren't going to want to sell it off. And that's one of the major points of Bitcoin right now. Many people are betting, even up to millions of dollars, that people will continue to buy into Bitcoin, and that when it has mass adoption, because only less than 1% of the population of the world own Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, when it does have mass adoption, that value is going to go sky high. That's where these numbers like 500,000 to a million per Bitcoin come from. When it's mass adopted, when people are using Bitcoin to buy food, to buy anything online. You can already purchase things on websites like Newegg. What about when Amazon starts accepting Bitcoin? What's going to happen then? By that time, there will be so many investors in it, and this may be soon, but there will be so many investors in it that the value of the currency will be much more stable. Also, those investors will not be interested in selling because it's deflationary. More money in, the more money that their money is worth. So that's kind of the deal about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and every cryptocurrency has different attributes. I'll get into that in another video, but I hope this was a pretty easy, quick rundown of Bitcoin. And there are scammers in the crypto world, and there are dangers. I'm gonna go over that in another video, but for now, I hope that can solve some of you guys' questions, or maybe it can teach you about something that a lot of people think is going to change the entire financial paradigm that we live in right now, because you don't want to be the last one to hear about this. So maybe you can share this video, you can comment below, and let me know what you think, because I'm really curious about what the average person is thinking about Bitcoin. And I know you hear a lot of crazy things on the news about China regulating it. Another thing to keep in mind is that China is an extremely regulated country. They have an entire firewall around the country, and they can't even use Google. So I have to say that it wasn't unexpected to see that China regulated cryptocurrencies. If they can't even use Google, I was kind of expecting it. I don't know about you guys, but please leave a comment below and let me know your story, or if you have any more questions, or what you think about cryptocurrencies in general, if you think they're a scam, if you think they're a pyramid scheme. Please, I love contention. So anyways, guys, I will see you on the other side.